Calvin and Hobbes as a historic document, this time on the Everything is a Primary Source podcast. Want to bring history to life in your classroom? With Everything is a Primary Source to go, you can borrow real historical artifacts from the last 200 years, shipped right to your school. It's hands-on history, paired with ready-to-use lesson plans and classroom activities that make the past come to life for you and your students. Whether you're teaching the Industrial Revolution all the way up through the Communication Revolution, there's something in our collection for every era. Visit everything-history.com/EPS to go and start transforming your teaching today. That's everything-history.com/EPS to go, because history belongs in your hands. Welcome to the Everything is a Primary Source podcast, the show where we navigate history through popular culture. I'm your host, Eric Salmonson. I'm a social studies teacher, historian, and pop culture enthusiast. Each episode, I sit down with everyday people to discuss the media, objects, places, and events that shape us and reveal what they say about the past, as well as who we are now. The Everything is a Primary Source podcast is, therefore, your history, my history, our history through popular culture. So Gibby, I'm so glad to have you here at the. This is my little pop shop thing that I have in the Makers Fest at the Children's Museum. Have you come to Makers Fest before?
Yes.
And what do you usually look for? What's your favorite things at Makers Fest?
Kind of anything really. I like seeing what people have made.
Like kind of what comes out of people's imaginations.
Yeah.
And you can usually spot what people are inspired by, can't you? Mm-hmm. You know, like there's an author over there, and I actually talked to her before, and she was talking about what inspires her, and then, obviously the robot people, I think all those movies and TV shows about robots have definitely probably got their interest into. Do you make things at all?
I like art.
Mm-hmm.
I have a big sketchbook, and so far I only have 2 drawings that one I haven't fully finished, but they fill the whole entire page.
Oh, that's great. There was a show when your dad and I were young. I don't know if Dad remembers this one. Do you remember a show called Secret City with Commander Mark?
Yep.
Yeah, and he would draw. He would give lessons on how to draw, mostly kind of aliens and robots and space type stuff. And then at the end of every episode, they would, among other things, they would have kids would send in their drawings. And this is before the internet, so they had to send them in the mail. And then they'd show them on the screen. But then they would add to this gigantic mural. Kind of sounds like what you're doing.
Oh.
Of a big city, like a futuristic or alien planet city. It was such a cool show. I loved it. And it was, I feel like I got that same kind of feeling whenever I looked at what we're about to talk about, Calvin and Hobbes books. Mm-hmm. Now that particular title was out of syndication, I think probably by the time you were born. So what was it about? When did you start looking at Calvin and Hobbes? Did you have books and stuff?
I was in 3rd grade when we went to library class, and I found it because I read graphic novels mainly. So I checked it out and I started reading it, and I really liked it because it didn't fully connect. There are all these different stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was because it was done. It's funny like that because I remember similar experience. I saw one of their books. I think I got it at a book fair, maybe the school book fairs, or maybe I got it at a store, and I kind of recognized it from the Sunday or the newspaper, but I liked the books because you could just go through it super fast, right? You didn't have to like wait for the next newspaper to show up in the mail. You could just read the story as it goes through. And you're right. Bill Watterson, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, would, like a lot of comic artists, do standalone comics. So there'd be like one strip that didn't have anything to do with the next one. But then he would also get these stories going and try to... And sometimes he would introduce new characters, but they didn't really pan out. He stuck with the main Calvin Hobbes, his Tiger Hobbes, and then Mom and Dad, and that was pretty much it. They had Susie the neighbor and Miss Wormwood the teacher, and occasionally Rosalind the babysitter would show up, but mostly it was just their world. So what behavior and ideas was really kind of like the centerpiece of Calvin and Hobbes?
It was kind of like a young child, like their imagination, it usually just runs wild.
Yeah.
There's no stopping point until you've reached like the age where you're realizing I'm maturing now and I can't be acting like this, all goofy and crazy.
Yeah. Or can you? I mean, I think about that is definitely a message that I get from that, and I feel like the cartoonist decided to stop making it after a while just because he felt like he maybe ran out of, I don't know, it just wasn't fitting what he wanted to do anymore. But if you're still an imaginative person, when you came into my room, you were looking at like Pee Wee Herman's house, right? I mean, he was a very imaginative person his whole life, but he directed it into making it into movies and TV shows and stuff like that. But do you find that you take after Calvin and Hobbes in some way? When you're in a situation, do you ever like sitting at your desk at school, does it ever turn into something in your mind just to be fun and have an imagination?
It hasn't yet, but
it will now. Just because I said it. Or like driving in a car, and because to go back to the time period, I mean, Calvin and Hobbes came out in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with what kinds of things kids had in the 80s to fulfill their imagination?
Yes.
Like what?
I'm a big Transformers fan, so that was a kind of big thing. What else? I'm pretty sure, no, that was like maybe late 90s, early 2000s. But, I mean, mainly they just had like the woods and like a bunch of friends. Because my dad has told me stories about his childhood, and it like, one of them was that he made like a big tree house with his friends, but it was about to fall apart pretty much.
But it was a project that they took on. They imagined it up in their minds. They came up with all it, and I would definitely say that it represents, the 80s represented this transformational period when it came to children playing like Calvin and Hobbes do with their imagination. We started to have more that was feeding into our imagination because television was getting more expansive. We had video games that was feeding into it. We had big, movies with all sorts of special effects that were starting to, like, I remember playing Ghostbusters with my friends, and I didn't have enough money to get the actual official toys to be, with a proton pack and all that, but I would use a stick, and we used a brick instead of that thing that the trap that they used for the ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was our way, but it wasn't an original idea of ours, right? Now my friends and I did come up with original ideas sometimes. And that's what makes the 80s such a magical time, is because, some of the stuff that Calvin dreams up, like what are some of your favorite like fantasies that he has, like his fictional characters that he makes himself?
Spaceman Spiff
I knew
is
it, yeah.
one of my favorites, and Captain Stupendous.
Yep. And it's like they're kind of somewhat based on, like, Spaceman Spiff seems like very, like, 60s style space show, like a Lost in Space type thing, and Captain Stupendous, obviously, like a superhero. So it's not like he is manufacturing these things all by himself. He's being inspired by other stuff, but he still has, he's using his what do you call it, his radio flyer wagon as his vehicle, or, you know, I think that's where they go to Mars on, is that thing. That's their ship to go to Mars. And sometimes it doesn't even transform. Sometimes it is the wagon, even in that. Or when they play Calvin Ball and they make up all the different, or do you remember the one where he built all the snowmen and they all came to life? And like, but then you would see the reality of it, and the parents are like, what is going on? Like, what's with our kid? And so it made the reader wonder, like, is he actually imagining this, or is it real? And then, of course, the ultimate imagination is his stuffed tiger Hobbes being his friend and things like that. It does represent, and in a way I wonder if it's just perfectly fine that Bill Watterson stopped making it. Like, do you think that the comic would still have the same resonance? Would it still mean as much if it went into the modern era?
I think because back when it came out, he was like a regular boy, but then now everyone like has technology and like has access to like internet, so like it, like, I feel like it'd slightly change, but still be the same Calvin having his friend that is the stuffed tiger Hobbes and going on adventures.
Right. I would be worried if some of that technology would get in too much to the story, you know, because again, back in the 80s and even early 90s, like, they had computers, but they didn't have internet, and so he wouldn't, you know, they certainly didn't have smartphones, stuff like that. I think about a lot of other properties, like The Simpsons, they incorporate smartphones into their storytelling now, and they also came from a similar time period where they didn't have any of that kind of stuff. So it's a good question to think about. But what we'll do is we'll leave it open for somebody else to add their ideas. I really liked your ideas. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about Calvin and Hobbes. Yep. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your time at Makers Fest.
Yep, I will.
Thank you. Popular culture, by definition, connects and unites us, and proves that people of different backgrounds, in fact, have a lot in common with one another. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, at least in part, for that reason. If it connects with you and you'd like to add to it, or any of the podcast episodes, just visit everything-history.com and search for the Everything is a Primary Source project, which can be found in the classroom section of the website. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Be sure to rate and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it now, and follow Everything as a Primary Source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. Thank you for listening to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source. Calvin and Hobbes as a historic document, this time on the Everything is a Primary Source podcast.